Salesforce CRM Tools, Full Tutorial for Beginners, Complete Training Masterclass 2026. In this video, I'll be providing a full beginner training tutorial on Salesforce CRM tool. I'll be going over record types, automations, reporting, and more. If you are new to Salesforce or looking to learn more about Salesforce CRM, then this video will be perfect for you. I've added chapters to this video, so feel free to jump ahead to any part of the system that you'd like to learn more about. Welcome to the channel. My name is Drew Brockbank. I'm the owner of Brockbank Consulting, an elite CRM consultancy, and I've set up CRM systems for over 141 organizations. And in this masterclass, I will show you how to go from a beginner to a power user in Salesforce step by step according to best practices. Inside of the Salesforce interface, you have a sidebar if you are in the new Lightning Enhanced User Interface. Now, if you're not seeing a sidebar, that's completely fine. We will be going over things that are relevant to every edition of Salesforce CRM Sales Cloud. As you can see here, we are in the Sales Cloud. Now, we start in the Leads module inside of the Sales Cloud, but I actually want to take a step back over to the home page. We'll come back to the Sales Cloud. Now, when you're inside of the home page, you're seeing everything inside of your Salesforce account at a glance. It's really helpful because what you can do is you can go over to each of these components and it's essentially a window into a certain section of Salesforce CRM. For example, this My Lead section. You can search here for different views that you have inside of Salesforce very quickly. You can go to all new leads like that. You can also search for just your leads specifically and very quickly reference information from one dashboard, which is very helpful. You can even create new records here. If you go to New, you can create new records inside of Salesforce very quickly from the dashboard. So again, the purpose of the dashboard is to get a view of what's going on inside of Salesforce at a glance. What you can do as well here is you can change these different home cards so that you can make this relevant to you. So you have these different components that you can bring onto the home page in order to make it relevant to your role, and you can access the information that's critical for you. You can even see your recent records here. It's helpful to just give you an idea of what's going on at a glance. Now you also have this search bar, which is really helpful. You want to search for records, you can very quickly search for them using the search bar, and you can use the hotkey shortcut / from anywhere here. You'll notice I won't even click it in order to access that search at any time, which is very helpful. I like doing things search first. Okay, when I'm accessing records, I don't like to go into all these folder structures, try to guess what's going on. I like to just hit / search for my record and get to where I want to go. Okay, you can also add different parameters around what you're searching for. So if you don't want to just search for everything all at once, you can just search for accounts, contacts, whatever object you want to search for. Now we're going to get into more depth on what these are. These different record types, also referred to as objects. An object just being a digital representation of a real thing. Obviously, you can't actually put the people that are relevant to your organization inside of Salesforce CRM. And because you can't put the people in here, you can't put the actual organizations in here. You put a digital record or a form in order to represent them. Or in other words, you have different record types. So, if you hear objects, just think it's a different type of record. With that, you're easily able to access information here, and then you can even interact with the record from the search, which is extremely useful. You can go right into edit the record, convert the record. We'll talk about conversion in just a moment and things like that. Delete change owner. You can access information and modify the record right from the search. Okay, so that's the search bar. Then you've got here the guidance center, which is essentially where Salesforce stores resources to help you use the system correctly. So if you are a little confused as to what you're supposed to do on this page or what's relevant to you, you can go over to this question mark, go to the guidance center resources, and very quickly get familiar with different resources that Salesforce has to offer about how to use the system. Then you have this cogwheel here at the top right, with a lightning icon in the middle. If you click on this, this is the quick settings. So you can access fields, so you can customize fields, sales stages to make sure that Salesforce CRM is reflecting your sales process, and then also users, business details, fiscal year, billing and purchases, etc. And you have the Open Advanced setup. We're going to go here really briefly, and then we're just going to come back just so that you know how to access this. This is the setup page where you can modify what's happening on the back end of Salesforce. Okay, so depending on your user role, you will be able to make changes on the back end of Salesforce. So you can determine what it looks like and what its different configurations are, which is how it actually works on the back end. And then here you have notifications. Okay, so in notifications, you'll be able to see all the different updates that are relevant to you. You can mark them all as red, and then you can see that bell will pop up with notifications every time something relevant to you is coming up. And then here you have view profile. So if you want to see information related to you specifically, and then you can change your display density, then you have options to add a username, things like that. Okay, one other thing I want to show you real quickly here on the homepage before we move forward is we're able to click on this pencil icon to change what sections are going to show up here at the top. For example, right now on this page, the home page, I have home showing up. But if I want to drag modules or objects or record types from the rest of these hubs into this tab or this top navigation, I can go to add more items. Then I can go to all, and then I can drag these different objects onto my view. So accounts, for example, if I hit save, then accounts is going to pop up here, and I can click on accounts and then see all my accounts. Okay, so I can customize the homepage view, so it doesn't just include these dashboard components. I can also see objects that are relevant to me at a glance. Okay, so we're going to remove that. But the cool thing about this too is when you're navigating through this, you can click on this drop-down arrow. You can create a new account. You can see recent records, recent list. Really useful, very, very robust. Okay, so I'm going to remove this, hit save, and now we're actually going to get into the Sales Cloud. Now, if you're not in the new enhanced interface, you'll probably start on a page that looks more like this, which is why I started the training like this, because not everyone has migrated or moved over to the new Salesforce enhanced Lightning user interface. So here, once we get into the Sales Cloud, which is all the software that Salesforce is offering that will support that area of business, you'll see we're in the leads module. Okay, you might start in the home, but you should see leads here, and leads represent unqualified opportunities to do business with somebody. For example, if someone fills out a form on your website, more likely than not, they should end up in the leads module first. It's your dumping ground for all of the unqualified opportunities. Why do I say unqualified? Well, if someone fills out a form on your website, all you know about them is that they have a heartbeat and a Wi-Fi connection. You don't know if they have the budget, the authority to do business with you. You don't know if they actually need what you're offering quite yet. You don't know if the timing is right. You don't know anything. That's BMP, by the way. That's a qualification criteria that you can use very quickly to determine if someone is right to do business with you. Now, leads is typically going to be more relevant in a B2B situation. You can do it in a BTOC situation, but typically in BTOC you can skip the leads module and use contacts. It really does depend. Now, a quick caveat here where leads is typically the starting place of where you contain information or bring in information to the system. If you are doing account-based marketing, then you will actually start your sales process in the accounts module. I'm going to make a very quick note on this because it's going to be relevant to some of you. It's not going to be relevant to a lot of you, but that's okay. You can kind of translate what this will mean for you. When you do accounts-based marketing, it means you start with a finite list that you're going to go through. For example, if you serve Fortune 500 companies, you already know who you're doing business with. You can use the leads module, but you want to put your target market list, your target accounts, into the accounts module first, so that as you grow your contacts list underneath each of those accounts, you can actually relate them together. Leads can't do that because leads is an orphan module. It sits independently from the rest of the system. Leads is dirty so that contacts, accounts, and opportunities can be clean. So you bring information into the leads module initially, and then once a lead is qualified, you go to convert. This is the lead record interface. We'll go over that in a little more depth. When you go to convert, a lead can then become an account, contact, and opportunity. So hopefully that makes a little more sense. Leads are unqualified opportunities, and then deals, or opportunities here, are qualified deals to do business with someone, or qualified opportunities. Okay, another way to think about this is leads is usually where SDRs will be, and then opportunities usually where account managers or account executives will be. Okay, so that is the leads module. It's where unqualified opportunities go. And then real quickly here, each of these at the top, these are different modules or different objects inside of Salesforce. It's really critical to understand that each of these represent a thing in real life. Leads being unqualified opportunities, contacts being people, accounts being organizations, and opportunities being the qualified deals that come into the organization, and then we'll get into the rest of these. So contacts, as we go into contacts, you'll notice I had previously converted a lead to a contact, and one of the benefits of doing this conversion, if we jump into a record here and go to convert, one of the huge benefits here is once we do a conversion, it takes the information from the leads, it will create 3 different records and associate them together, so it saves you time. I'm trying to make the case for the leads module because a lot of people get confused by it, then they don't use it, and then they end up creating in the future the functionality that the lead served in the first place. So they kind of miss the point, and then recreate it in a different custom object. And I'm like, what are you doing? It already existed. So it's really important to get an understanding of why this was built the way that it was, and then you can determine if you want to use it and if it's relevant to your situation. Okay, so with that, let's go over to contacts. These are the people that have to do with your organization. I keep that definition very generic because it has to fit a lot of different organization situations and business situations. So it's just the people that you want to keep track of. Okay, and then leads once qualified potentially turn into a contact. They really should turn into a contact. Then you have accounts. We move over to accounts. These are the organizations that you want to do business with, or different organizations that you want to keep track of. Now, I'm going to pause here on the accounts. I'm going to start to point out a couple of different elements here on the list view page. Okay, so the first thing I want to point out to you here is this views where you can see different list views. And this is where a platform like Salesforce is going to have an advantage over something like a spreadsheet. So for example, a spreadsheet, you don't have an ability to switch the views on the same page. You might have different tabs, but to kind of filter your view of the same information, you don't have that capability. So it's one advantage you have here over something more archaic, like a spreadsheet, even though spreadsheets have advantages because spreadsheets are more flexible, but not as robust. They don't scale very well, whereas CRM software like Salesforce is harder to set up. It's less flexible, but it scales extremely well, and that's what it's built for. You could get in some nuance arguments there, but that generally is true. Okay, so here you can switch through different views to narrow, so you're not seeing all the information. You're just seeing the information that's relevant to you. You can also create custom list views as well. Keep that in mind. You can search through the list here with this search bar. So here's searching generally, right? And then here you're searching more specifically. Then you have this cog wheel to see for list view controls. So you can clone, rename, do some actions there. Then you can also choose the way you want to see your information. This is really critical. Table view is more like a spreadsheet. Kanban view is what gives you the ability to see your information in relation to your processes. So not only are you storing information, you can actually do something about the information that you're storing. And that is the beauty of a CRM platform or software like Salesforce CRM, is you don't want to just store information, you want to do something about it. Now, to take a step back, I'm actually going to show you here in the Opportunities module what a Kanban view looks like, because in the Opportunities module or object, you do see a path here, which is your process, which is a Kanban view. Okay, it's default and Kanban view, because at a default, Salesforce CRM wants to say, hey, these are where opportunities are at in your process. Now, some quick things to go over here for the Kanban view. You don't want more than 7 stages generally, or fewer than 4, because fewer than 4 isn't enough stages to give you a good indication as to where something is at. And then above 7 is too overwhelming, and you've got to break 2 things apart in your mind. You have on one part the stages of a process, which are the general phases that something will go through, such as an opportunity. Then you have steps, which are the specific things that you will do in order to get something done. So these are the stages, and you can keep track of steps somewhere else. You can keep track of tasks within Salesforce CRM. And your task can represent the steps. These stages, this path, will represent the stages or the general phases of the process. Really critical to understand that when I go into a system and I see that someone's added 50 different Kanban view stages. It's just a very quick way to understand that someone doesn't know what they're doing in the system. It's okay if you've done that. Well, it's not okay if you've done that. Honestly, you got to fix it. But I'm just saying, it doesn't mean you're stupid. You just don't know what you don't know, which is completely fine. Okay, so a couple other things here. You have the split view, which I'll show you very quickly. Just gives you an idea of the records here, and you click on them, and then the record will appear on the left. So, it's kind of nice. You get the side menu to jump through different records. And then if you want to flip back to the list view that you want, you can go back to Kanban, or you can click back here, then go over to Table. Really nice. And then you can refresh as well. You can also edit the list. If you want to make some modifications there. And then you've got some other things that you can change there to make it look the way that you want. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is, because I jumped from accounts over to opportunities. Quick definition. I've gone over a little bit, but I want to make sure that this sinks in. Opportunities represent the qualified deals that you'll be doing with somebody, and you can technically start people in the opportunities module, and you can skip the leads altogether. Situations in where that'd be appropriate is if 99% of the time, if you get a new opportunity, they are qualified, meaning you want to dedicate real sales resources to trying to win that deal. But leads is like, do you want to dedicate resources? I don't know. Let's see if they're qualified first. Typically, to make this a little more real for you, everything after the first meeting with somebody would be inside of opportunities. And in the leads module, if they're not qualified after that first meeting, you would put them in a status like recycled, which means they're not qualified, or you just put them in a not qualified status. Okay? Whereas for opportunities, if they're almost always qualified, you can just skip right there. There's some things that are a little complicated, because then what you have to do, this is something you have to weigh out the cases for each of these. And I know it's not fun. Like, I'm going in a lot of depth here, but it's important that you do that, because if you don't, you're going to be inside of the wrong objects doing the wrong things, and you have to rebuild the system, so you might as well make the case up front. When I say make the case, have strong reasons for why you're doing what you're doing up front, then build the wrong system, and then fix it later, because the most expensive system is a broken system, because then it's expensive on your time, it's expensive on resources as well. Okay? So my case for opportunities is, number one, it's for qualified deals. And then number two, the important thing to understand about opportunities is you can skip it. But then for every single new deal that comes in the door, you have to create a contact and an account and tie them together, so you just make more work for yourself most of the time. So I try to get everyone to use the leads as much as I can before I give up on it and say, okay, they're not understanding it. We're going to go to opportunities. Okay? So I try to win that battle on the leads front if I can. If you're doing account-based marketing, and you'll know if you are doing that, this isn't as relevant to you. By the way, if you're doing account-based marketing as well, you can use the leads module too, but you would use it for like web form fills. And then your target accounts, or your dream 100 accounts, or whatever you want to call it, would be in the accounts module or the accounts object. Okay, so that's opportunities. Let's go over to products. These are the things that you are offering. Okay, so these can be services, these can be physical items. But the nice thing about this is once you create a product, then you can reference that when you try to sell someone something. Okay, so you want to make sure that products are created, so for your goods and services, so that you can quote them to customers. Then you've got price books. And price books essentially allows you to have different pricing for different products. That's the quick explanation for it. And we'll go ahead and we'll just create a new product here so you can kind of see what it looks like. We'll just do new product. Do your product family none. You can put in a SKU if you want, and then you can save this. Salesforce CRM is highly customizable, by the way. So if you want to change some of these fields, it's not looking the exact way you want. That's completely fine as well. You got price books. Or we're in price books. Inside of price books, we are able to create different pricing for the new product that we created. Let's jump over to calendar. The calendar view helps you see your events on a timeline. Pretty self-explanatory. I'm sure you've used a calendar before, and so this should look pretty familiar to you. And you can integrate with popular calendars as well, so that the information populates for you. Then you've got analytics, which is your way of not just storing enter script for scene 1 information, but then displaying the information in a way that's helpful, so you can make better decisions. And inside of the analytics section, you have your home, Browse, Favorites, and then you have some collections here. And these collections are related, as you can see, to different clouds. When I say different clouds, I'm talking about different products that Salesforce offers. So when you jump into the collections, you can jump into a report, and it can give you a report to show you information in a way that's helpful for you to make better decisions and reference what's going on. So that's the analytics section. The next thing we're going to do, so I'm just going to jump into a record and give you a bit of a better understanding of the record view, and then we will slide forward. Okay, so a few things you can do here, at least in the lead object, is you have the convert, which again turns a lead into an account contact opportunity. It's the initial dumping ground. You can change the owner, something important to understand about any CRM platform, because it's a relational database. It's going to require that you have a user assigned to each record, okay? Or the best practice is to have a record assigned to each record. One of the core principles of a relational database is that there's, at least in a CRM system context, is that there is someone that owns each record. That's something important to know. That way, if there's something that falls through the cracks, we know who we can code to correct that mistake from happening. Okay, so I'm going to submit that. I already own this record. Awesome. So, next thing is edit. If I want to change the information that exists on the record, then I have this view that I can go to, which is helpful. You can see all the information organized by different sections, which is always helpful. And then if I click on this drop-down arrow, I create a new event, log a call, new task, delete, and I can also integrate with my email so that I can reference emails here as well. And this is highly customizable. I can make this look the way that I want so that I can see the information that I want to see very quickly. You can see I can add activities here. So this is on the left-hand side is going to be the information that's relevant to the record. And then here in the middle are the different activities. What on earth is going on? What's upcoming and overdue? What are the different activities that are assigned? And I can create automations, by the way. So if I have a set of tasks that I need to do, right, these different steps, you can create tasks to represent the steps of your process. And then if you're wondering, because I know I'd be wondering this if I were you might be thinking, well, I want to make sure I have the right stages. I want to make sure that I'm working leads in the right way. How do I do the prep or the homework so that I can build this correctly? I just recommend you get out a Google Doc or some kind of notepad and just bullet out the whole process, and then take those raw notes, clean them up, and having a bulleted outline of a process is a great foundation to then create the stages necessary, then the steps. Some people try to do this from the top down. They're like, let's get the stages outlined first and then we'll get the steps. That's not how this works. You need to get the detailed steps first and then you group the steps. Those become stages, and then some of those steps will become tasks, okay? So you can preload tasks into each record. I'd rather you do the hard work up front and then get rewarded through those automations of having tasks created for the relevant objects like leads and new deals as they come in, as opposed to not doing the hard work up front. And it's always hard because you have to manually create a new task every time you want to do something, okay? So you got events, calls, tasks, and then you can delete the record right here, okay? And then you can bring these over. You can mark as current status, and then you can see that it's increased your progression through the path, which is kind of cool. Has a cool animation for that. Okay, so record information, the details about the record, the person that you're looking at, the lead, which technically, just to be precise here, leads aren't people. Leads are unqualified opportunities. Drews are unqualified opportunity. And then we have the activities, and then there's no potential duplicates of this lead. But Salesforce will try to find a duplicate, just so that and that's the thing too, is you got to be careful with this terminology. Duplicate of lead, because technically someone Drew Brockbank from Brockbank Consulting, for example, could go on your website and fill out 2 different forms. Now you have a decision to make. That form can either update the lead, you can make it update the lead, or you can make the form because if there are 2 different forms, right? 2 different submissions of that form could be for 2 different services that you offer, 2 different products. So, wouldn't you want to represent those as 2 different opportunities? Maybe or maybe not, right? Because maybe you want to track, hey, Drew filled out a form 2 years ago on the website, and that was marked as unqualified. We met with Drew, and he wasn't ready. It was bad timing. But then yesterday, Drew filled out a form for a different service that we offer, and he's starting from new. Okay. So that hopefully kind of makes the case for why you might want to have duplicate leads in the system, because they represent different times where someone was an unqualified opportunity, okay? It just helps you keep track of things better. Depends on the level of detail you want to keep track of things. Okay, if you want to keep it simple, then just don't do any dupes. If you want to have really good tracking, so you can see on-off on average, how many different form fills does it take before we can actually close a deal? You could say, hey, actually people fill out 3 or 4 different forms before they become qualified, something like that. Okay, and with that is the objects at a high level inside of Salesforce CRM Sales Cloud, and the record view, and some of the details surrounding the interface so that you can use Salesforce according to best practices. How do you customize Salesforce CRM Sales Cloud? Well, you can go over to the cogwheel here at the top right. Once you click on this, you can go over to Open Advanced Setup. Now you can go to Fields for quick reference. If you want to change the fields and opportunities, accounts, contacts, leads, but if you want to go through the advanced way, which is just a little more robust, you can click on Setup there. You can go over to Quick Find and search for Object Manager. And then what you can do here, which is interesting, is within each object think of, when you think here object, just think a type of record or a record type. You go into that specific object and then you can modify how it works. So you can change the page layouts here. You can make multiple layouts, which be careful about getting too crazy with layouts, because the more complicated you make the system, the harder it's going to be to use. And I cannot stress enough, I like to doom scroll. Honestly, some people are just going to disagree with me on this, and that's okay. I'd rather doom scroll through information than have 10 layouts, page layouts that I can't use or remember because I don't remember what each layout is for. That's just my personal preference when using a system. Gets so confusing so quickly for people. Different fields and relationships. If you want to add fields, if you want to see deleted fields, you can go here and manage the different fields. You can create your own custom pages so you can see information in the way that you want. Okay. So, if you want to create a specific view there, you can certainly do that. And then you've got buttons, links, and actions, compact layouts, field sets. There's so much you can do here to customize how each object looks and behaves. That's one huge advantage that you have inside of Salesforce as a platform, is there is essentially endless capabilities for customization and configuration in the platform. So one thing is you don't want to be too crazy on this, only because you have a limited amount of resources in terms of time and energy and money typically to invest in these things. You have limited amount of that, and you have unlimited amount of things that you can change. And so you want to be careful to go too crazy because you want to abide by what's called task technology bit theory, which essentially states there's a billion things you can do inside of Salesforce, none of which are worth doing unless it supports your processes and your customer journey if you are a business. And so you want to make sure that you're not doing things that are cool, like creating all these page layouts, unless they support the processes in your organization, unless it's relevant. Okay, because task technology bit theory is you have essentially this Venn diagram. You have the things that you're doing on one side, and then you in the processes, the stages and the steps on one side, and then you have the platform or the technology that you use, being Salesforce. The more overlap we can get with those two things, the more success we can have inside of the platform. The more that Venn diagram, if you will, is separate, the less likely you will be to successfully use a platform and take advantage of it. So be really careful with this. Know what you're able to do. That you can add different fields, that you can make page layouts, that you can add buttons for custom functionality. But don't feel like you have to do it just to do it. Do it when it's relevant to the process that you're trying to support. Okay? So it's a long-winded way of saying and go to the object manager if you want to do some baseline customization. Obviously, there's a lot more you can do in the way of customization here. There's so much that you can do in order to get Salesforce to look the way that you want it to look and function the way that you want it to function. But that is customization. A brief overview of some of the customization capabilities inside of Salesforce. To configure your Salesforce CRM stages, you can go over to the cogwheel, and then under Sales Stages, you can click here to make sure that the stages match your process. Now remember, where your sales funnel, there are two things you've got to separate in your mind. You have, and also to take a step back, leads and opportunities, their status and stages together effectively represent your entire sales process, the leads being the unqualified side and the opportunity being the qualified side. So the reason that I bring this up, you got to make sure you separate these statuses and stages from the steps. The steps will be represented as tasks. The statuses and stages will represent the general phases of the process. Now the best homework you can do is get out a notepad and list out step by step. Yes, you have to get that detailed. Unfortunately, I wish there was an easier way. There's not. Don't skip the work. Don't do this sloppy. Do it right. We went over general customization. This is more specific to sales stages. Once you do your homework, you get it out step by step. Then you can kind of in a notepad say, okay, these 20 steps represent all the things we do to get someone from qualified to meet and present with them. Okay, so not only can you change the stage and stat the stage and status names, you can also set the default. You can mark when we're going to convert a record so that it's converted into a deal, passes on from unqualified to qualified. And then here for statuses, you can do open, won, lost. Why is this relevant to you? Well, the status for each stage, which is kind of confusing the way that they do that, right? Status. It's like, what are you talking about? Well, this status here for the opportunities and opportunities. Just so you know, opportunities are really your pipeline. So, people like anything coming down the pipe, that's usually the opportunity stages they're referring to. These statuses represent whether or not they are going to be, how you're going to do your forecasting, or your probability is going to be for forecasting. Status is like what's in the open part of the pipeline, and then what's been closed, okay? And then won or loss, so that you can, in your reporting, you can filter those things out. Because some people will do like additional stages, like closed won onboarding, and then they mark that one, right? Because that's not open. That's not a open opportunity in progress. That's closed. Okay, so these are two closed stages, and then this is your open stages. So this is what hasn't been completed. This is completed, and you did good. You won the deal, and then you lost the deal. Okay, and then these probabilities will be useful in reporting, so that if you want to say, hey, what are we looking to close in 2 months? Well, if you can say, hey, on average, I don't know this for certain, but for every meet and present opportunity I get, I usually close 1 out of 4. Well, great. You can put that in as the probability, so that in the future you can determine, hey, if I have 4 meet and present opportunities that should be closing next month, then I'll probably close 1 of them. Okay, so probability is helpful for forecasting. Don't worry about getting these perfect, by the way, up front. It's completely fine for you to make a guesstimate or an educated guess initially, and then you can always refine those over time. It's not completely, it doesn't have to be perfect right off the bat. I notice a lot of people, they try to do everything perfect off the bat. I'm like, don't do that. Just take a guesstimate right now. We'll collect some data, and we can make even a more educated decision what to define as probabilities in the future, okay? And that is how you can customize sales stages inside of Salesforce. How do you create automations inside of Salesforce? Well, you can go over to the cogwheel at the top right, then click over to Advanced Setup here. Once you click on that, you'll be taken to a screen that looks something like this. Then with the Quick Find, you can go over and search for flow. Then you'll see a flow section. Now flows are workflows. They are automations or things that you can build into the system to get processes to work the way that you want and automate things so you can accomplish more while doing less. Now, when you go over to New Flow here, this is how you can actually create an automation. You're going to enter the flow builder. Now, a couple things you got to understand about automations before we create one. Number 1, the homework you need to do is you need to bullet out your steps. Once you see your steps, I think it's good to go through steps in a process manually a couple times, because just after writing down your steps, that's not necessarily a best practice. And if you automate a bad practice, you've essentially cemented bad practices into your organization. So automating too fast isn't always a good thing. Some people want to automate everything all at once really quickly. And I'm like, slow down. Let's line up the process, run through it a couple times, and then we'll start to identify these key automations that we can build. But some things are obvious to do. For example, when someone submits a form on your website, enters the leads module, send them a notification saying, hey, thanks for filling out the form to prepare for your free consultation, or thanks for subscribing to the newsletter. Here's some resources you might find helpful. To prepare for a free consultation, here's some resources that you might find helpful in the meantime. This is what you can do to best prepare blah 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 blah. So to create an automation to do that, go to New Flow. You can start from scratch, or you can use a template. We're going to start from scratch. And inside of an automation, you have 3 major things you want to think about. 3 components that make up a workflow. Number 1, you have the event, which is the thing that happens in order to kick off the automation. For example, if you're going to send a lead notification to someone who submits a form on your website, the event would be form submitted or lead created. Okay, so we can do here's all the different kinds of flows that we can choose from. Record triggered flow. So like I just said, when a record is created, so we choose this one. Screen flow guides users through a business process that's launched for the Lightning pages. Okay, we have all these different types. The popular one would be record or event-based triggers, event-triggered flow. We're going to keep with record trigger flow here just so I can show you this whole thing. So once I create it, you have the when and the if and the then, right? Those are the three major components of an automation. When, if, then. The reason I say when, if, then is because it kind of flows like a story. When the lead record is created, if the form field equals book consultation, then send an email. And if you can say it in WINF, then we can build it. You can build it. Okay? Even if you can't say when, then as long as you can explain to someone who knows what they're doing, they can put it in a when, then in their mind, and then they can create it. By the way, the when doesn't have to be an event like record create. It could be anything. It can be an API call made to the system. It can be a time-based trigger. So every morning at 9 a.m. Look through all the accounts and ones that are inactive, send an email, things like that. Okay, so trigger the flow when write the when record is updated, created, or updated or deleted. Then we can set entry conditions, which is the if, and the if is a condition. So for example, maybe we don't want to send an email to every single lead that's created, only if they were created in the form, and they were created because they submitted a form on the website. In that case, we need to set an entry condition so that only the leads created with the form field equaling booked consultation, free consultation, will be sent an email. Okay, so it's a way to narrow the scope of when the automation will actually run. Usually you don't want these blanket automations that apply to everything. You want to set some entry conditions, okay? So that's something that you want to keep in mind as you do this. So we're going to search for the object here, the lead, and then we can set entry conditions if we wanted to, which we're not going to worry about, and then optimize the flow for either fast field updates. So updates the fields on the record that triggers the flow to run. This high-performance flow runs before the record is saved, or we can do actions in related records, update any record, and perform actions like send an email. This is more flexible. You want to select this. Okay, so once we've done this, we can go to plus, and then we can do some shortcuts. Update triggering event, update related records, send email alert. Okay. So then we can go to send email alert, and then we can actually edit here, we can go into the element to send an email that we want. Okay? So from here we want to add or associate an action for the specific thing that we want to do. We can go to email here too, send email, and then we can put the email together that we want. Okay, so I'm going to delete this alert. We're going to use send email action here. I'm going to go over to this element, add an element, and then on the right hand side we have this send email. I put the label, the API name, the description, add the writing token to body. I can configure the action the way that I want. But you'll notice I don't just have to use emails here. I can do whatever I want, right? We've got logic that we can add into this flow builder. We have the actions that are available to me. Email actions. We can go back, event actions. There's so much we can do in order to automate what's going on inside of our processes, inside of Salesforce, which is great. So if I wanted to send an email, this is how I can kick that off. Then I can save that action. I can give it a flow label. So we'll just call demo and demo. Then API name is what you'd want to reference if you were using code in order to reference the automation. These are the names that you reference using code. This is what you reference as a human actually being inside of the system. So we can save that. Think you can notice the flow is saving here. You can't activate this flow until you resolve an error. Send email action. Add at least one recipient. Well, I don't want to do that. This is just a demo to give you an example. But this is where you'd want to add certain information into the flow so that you can actually save it after you've configured it to work the way that you want to work. The nice thing too is when you're building these automations, you can hit run or debug right from the flow builder. That way you can have it. You can test it right within the builder, okay? Then you can just save as new versions as you're building this thing out so that you can see a version history as to how a flow has been modified over time. So that is a quick overview of how you can build automations into Salesforce. How can you get the Salesforce CRM mobile application and use it? Well, if you're on an iPhone, you're going to go to the App Store and then search for Salesforce CRM like I've done here. And once you search for it, you'll see a section for Salesforce. You can go ahead and download it. If you're on an Android device, you'll go over to the Play Store and do the same. Now, once you get the mobile application, you can jump into it, and you should see something like this after you've signed in. I've signed in. You haven't. So, make sure to sign in, and you'll see a lead screen here. Just like if we go back to the desktop application, you'll see the leads, contacts, accounts, opportunities here. We switch back over to my phone here. You'll see the leads, contacts, accounts, and opportunities. So, it's really nice to be able to see information on the go. We can go over to the menu option, and then you can go over to App Launcher. The idea here is you can jump from product to product here in the same way that you can jump from product to product here on the side, right? So we want to be able to do the same thing in both. We want to make sure that we can access the products that we use on a day-to-day basis within the desktop version as we can on our phone. We want to be able to see the same information and jump from app to app. So it's very useful. And then you can explore mobile home. I can add this to the application. This is just adding the home page to the application. So I can go home. Introducing home. Your most important data is now automatically curated just for you. Okay, really cool. So this is a nice feature so that you can get personalized information surfaced to your homepage and the mobile app according to what is relevant to your role, hopefully, right? So I can see recent records that I've accessed, can jump into those, and then I can also jump over to workflow rules. These are just the recent things that I've jumped through, right? It's not loading that list view. That's completely fine. I can see calendar, events, things like that. Also, once I go into leads, contacts, and accounts, I can look through different lists within each of those objects. And then menu, I can kind of sort what's relevant to the sales product.